Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere loud, loud in a medieval kind of way. Picture this. You're curled up on a straw mattress that smells faintly of sheep and smoke. And before the sun even peeks over the thatched roofs, a deep iron clang cuts through the fog. That's not your alarm clock, it's the village bell tower. And trust me, you can't hit snooze. The sound rolls down the muddy lane, across the pig pens, through open shutters, and straight into your bones. It's not just a wake-up call, it's law. If you're not up by the third toll, the reeve might mark you late for labor duty. And here's the twist, you probably wouldn't survive this world long enough to complain about mornings on social media. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where my bedtime travelers are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bell tower looms above you, a wooden skeleton crowned with a rough-cast bronze giant that glints like a dull moon. It's taller than anything else in the village, taller than the Lord's Hall, taller than the gossip, even taller than your ambitions. And at dawn, it rules. You sit up, the blanket of scratchy wool sliding off, and you listen. 1 toll, 2, 3. Each ring carries a different flavor depending on the fog. When it's thick, the bell sounds muffled, like a heartbeat under a pillow. When it's clear, the tone cuts sharp and clean, bouncing off every wall, making the geese startle and flap. The villagers time their lives by that echo. The first bell of morning isn't just a sound, it's the border between dream and duty. You shuffle out into the yard, bare feet cold against damp earth, chickens muttering under their breath like they're equally annoyed about being awake. Somewhere, a dog barks, then goes silent, listening. That's the strange thing. When the bell rings, everything else pauses. In your half-sleep days, you try to guess what hour it is. Time isn't measured by a glowing phone or a neat little wristwatch here. Instead, it's in the air. The bell decides it for everyone. Historians still argue whether peasants truly understood hours as we do today, or if they just lived from one toll to the next. Some scholars say the division of the day into structured hours was the church's sneaky way of training people for industrial discipline centuries before factories existed. Others think it was simply practically can't plow fields in the dark, and bells are louder than roosters. By the time you've splashed your face with cold water from a wooden pail, the sound has faded. In that brief hush after, the world feels strangely still, like the bell has sucked all motion out of the village. Then life surges back. Doors creak open, voices start murmuring, someone coughs, a baby cries. The blacksmith's apprentice curses softly as he stumbles out, still half drunk from last night. You smirk. Some things never change. You trudge toward the lane that leads to the church. Mud sticks to your ankles and the smell of smoke from early fires curls around the cottages. Above it all, the bell tower watches. There's something eerie about how it stands alone, as if the rest of the world grew around it. And in a way, it did. Many medieval villages literally sprouted around their church tower was the first stone thing built. The anchor for every road and hut that followed. The bell itself is no dainty ornament. It's cast from molten bronze poured into a mold dug out of clay and horse manure. Yes, manure because it prevents cracks as the metal cools. The process takes days, sometimes weeks, and the villagers gather like fans at a concert when it's finally unveiled. If the tone rings true, it's a good omen. If not, they whisper that the metal swallowed a sin. There's even one quirky bit of lore that says bells could be baptized. Priests would literally name them, sprinkle holy water, and pray they'd ward off demons or storms. Imagine baptizing your doorbell today. I name you Ringatron, protector of the Wi-Fi. When you reach the small square, you realize how everyone's synchronized by that single sound. Farmers hitch their oxen in rhythm. Bakers slide loaves into ovens. And even the grumpy Reeve scratches his head at the same moment each day. The bell doesn't just tell time, it creates it. Without it, the day wouldn't exist. You pass the miller's boy, who yawns wide enough to swallow a sparrow, and he mutters, "Curse that bell." You grin because you know he'd still miss it if it went silent. The church door creaks open, and the priest's father Oswin steps out to inspect the weather. His robe flaps in the chilly breeze, and he squints at the horizon. "Looks fair," he mutters. Fair weather means a full day of labor ahead, no excuses. The bell seems to confirm it with a soft afterhum, a lingering note that feels almost smug. Inside the tower, hidden from most eyes, a single man starts his morning ritual. The bell ringer or campanarius. If you want to sound fancy, is already at work, hauling on the thick rope that snakes down from the rafters. He's been awake since before you were. His arms are roped with muscle from years of swinging that bell. He doesn't get glory, he gets blisters. But he knows things no one else does. From up there, he sees the entire village unfold like a patchwork quilt of fields. The smoke trails, the shadows moving from one chore to another. He hears secrets carried by wind. A couple arguing behind a barn, a cow giving birth, a kid stealing bread. Every sound reaches him, but no one really sees him. Historians still debate whether these bell ringers were church servants, town officials, or just poor souls paid in leftover bread. Some records hint they were part of a guild of timekeepers. Others suggest they were outcasts too useful to shun, too lonely to belong. Either way, the ringer is the heartbeat of this world, and his hands literally pull time forward. You, on the other hand, just try to keep up. The sun starts creeping through the mist, turning everything gold for about 30 seconds before clouds swallow it again. Another bell strikes the signal for prayer before breakfast. Everyone kneels, muttering familiar Latin words most can't understand. It's routine, like brushing your teeth, only with more incense and fewer dentists. There's a smell of baked bread wafting from somewhere near the manor kitchens. Your stomach growls, but you keep your head bowed. The bell keeps a slow rhythm overhead, each toll separated by a long breath of silence. You wonder how it feels for the bell itself to spend centuries shouting commands at people, yet never hearing a reply. Maybe that's what makes its voice so deep, loneliness echoing in metal. You rise when the final tone fades. The morning feels properly started now. Even the dogs look more awake. A farmer leading to oxen nods to you, and you fall into step beside him. His name's Harlan, and he swears he can tell what kind of day it'll be by how the bell sounds. If it hums like a bee, good harvest, he says. If it clanks dull, rains cumin. You nod politely, though you're not sure you hear any difference. Still, who are you to argue with centuries of superstition? A curious fact here: many medieval communities believed their church bell could literally drive away storms. When thunder rolled in, the bell was rung furiously to break the clouds with sound. It worked about as well as shouting at your Wi-Fi router today, but they swore by it. Some even believed the metal's vibrations scared demons out of the sky. By mid-morning, the village hums like a hive. You can't move 10 paces without hearing someone refer to the bell after next toll. We'll eat. Wait till the bell for noon. Don't start till it rings again. It's like living inside a giant metronome. And yet, somehow, it feels comforting. Predictable? You know where you are in the day because the bell tells you. Miss a ring, and the world feels tilted, out of sync. You glance back once more before heading to your chores. The tower cuts a perfect silhouette against the pale sky, and for a moment, you think you see the faintest shimmer around it, heat haze, or maybe something else. People say blessed bells glow faintly at dawn when heaven's light touches their bronze. Historians still argue whether that story was born from faith or from a few too many mugs of ale. But standing there, listening to the last ripple of sound fade into the trees, you almost believe it. The bell ruled you this morning, as it ruled your parents and will rule your children. It isn't just an instrument. It's a voice older than memory, commanding, soothing, reminding. And as you shoulder your tools and trudge toward the fields, the air still vibrates faintly, as though the day itself hasn't quite finished waking up. The morning mist thins as you follow the trail toward the churchyard, that old bell still echoing faintly inside your ears like an aftertaste. You can almost feel it in your chest, a low vibration that hums through the ribs and refuses to leave. The lane is already filling with life. Traders pushing carts. A monk sweeping dust from the path, hens darting between feet like feathered pickpockets. You rub your eyes, trying to blink away the sleep, and you realize that everyone's moving according to the same invisible rhythm. The bell has wound them up like clockwork toys, and now the whole village clicks into motion. You're heading toward morning mass first, because that's what the second bell demands. There's no sleeping through it, not if you value your reputation or your soul. Father Oswin's sharp-eyed beetle notices who shows up late, and those names have a strange way of reaching the Reeves ledger. You slip into the growing line at the chapel door, the smell of wet wool and wood smoke hanging thick in the air. Inside, the small stone church glows faintly with candlelight. The air is damp, heavy with the scent of tallow and incense. You find a spot near the back, trying to blend into the crowd. Everyone's whispering, the kind of whispers that pretend to be prayers but are really just gossip in disguise. You catch snippets: someone's cow calved early. Someone else's husband drank the cider meant for Lent. The bell outside tolls a single, softer note, announcing the start of the service. Father Oswin clears his throat dramatically and raises his hands. His Latin chant rolls out slow and solemn, bouncing off the bare walls, mingling with the faint creaks of the rafters. You don't understand most of it, nobody really does, but you know the rhythm. Stand, kneel, cross yourself, repeat. The bell gives a small ring again midway through, signaling a turn in the Mass. Even prayer bends to its will. Historians still argue whether villagers truly felt devotion or just habit in these services. Some say faith was absolute, that people breathed religion the way you breathe air. Others think it was simply part of the village machinery, a system of control timed perfectly with the sound of metal striking metal. You're not sure where you stand, but as you watch Father Oswin's shadow flicker across the wall, you feel a strange comfort in the repetition. Then comes the best part: dismissal. The bell rings 3 sharp notes, and just like that, piety dissolves into hunger. The congregation spills outside, half blinded by sunlight. Someone sneezes, a dog starts barking again. The sacred mood evaporates faster than spilled ale. The square fills up with chatter. The bell's voice has shifted from holy to homely. It now calls the market into being. You wander toward the stalls, following your nose. Fresh bread, smoked fish, and that unmistakable tempest of cheese, aged just a bit too long, it all mingles into the dense perfume of market day. People spread out blankets, line up baskets, and haggle in voices that rise and fall like another kind of music. The bell above rings once more to declare the market open. That sound flips a switch in everyone. Coins jingle, scales clatter, and someone laughs too loud over the bleating of a tethered goat. It's chaotic, but there's an order beneath it, a pulse that keeps everything from collapsing. You notice how even the traders glance up now and then, waiting for the next ring to tell them when to stop, when to eat, when to pack up. The bell is both referee and clock, an unseen manager with perfect authority. You stop by a fruit cellar. Well, calling it fruit is generous. The apples are shriveled, more brown than red, and one looks suspiciously like it's already hosting a small worm family. Still, it's better than the turnip stew waiting at home. You trade a few copper coins, and the woman nods approvingly. "You came early," she says. "Good thing. The bell caught us off guard. Last week half my stock spoiled before I could set up." You laugh softly. The bell runs the market. Then, she shrugs. It runs everything. And she's not wrong. Somewhere beyond the square, a small handbell rings. This one thinner and higher pitched the signal for children to gather for chores or errands. A little further down, you spot something less cheerful, a wooden post with a parchment nailed to it. The Reeves notice board. The ink is smudged, but you can make out the words by the bell's order. It's about curfews. Again? The law says every house must snuff its fire and shutter its door when the night bell rings. Last week, a house didn't hand. The smoke spread through the thatch like a fuse. 2 cottages gone, 1 singed cat, and a new village rule. Never ignore the final toll. That's the strange thing about the Beelit's both protector and punisher. Miss its calls, and you pay for it. Obey, and it shelters you in rhythm. Historians still debate whether this obsession with sound was spiritual or just practical, but either way, it worked. The village runs smoother than your phone calendar. As the sun climbs higher, the heat turns the air thick and sweet with the smell of spilled ale. You find a shady spot by the church wall, munching on your questionable apple. A minstrel starts playing nearby, strumming something cheerful about St. Dunstan catching the devil by the nose with blacksmith tongs. The crowd joins in, half singing, half shouting. You smile despite yourself. The bell's shadow stretches across the square, slicing through the crowd like a sundial of authority. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Did you know medieval bells were thought to speak a language of their own? Latin inscriptions were cast into them. Lines like vivos, vozo, mortuos, plango, fulgora, frango, I call the living. I mourn the dead, I break the lightning. Some villagers believed those words weren't just decoration, but a literal spell that gave the bell its power. Imagine thinking your church bell could talk back to heaven. Another clang interrupts the thought, the third bell of the day. That means it's time for the Reeves tally and for field workers to report. The market starts thinning, the minstrel lowers his tune, and people drift toward their duties. You catch yourself sighing. Even leisure is borrowed time here. The priest strolls by, robe swishing, nodding to people like a king surveying his court. Work well today, he says to you. The bell will bring you home again. You nod politely, but a sly thought creeps in. What if it didn't? What if the bell just stopped? No sound, no rhythm, no rule. Would anyone know what to do? The idea feels oddly dangerous, like thinking too long about falling off a cliff. But the bell doesn't stop. It booms again, steady as a heartbeat, pulling you back from that thought. You glance toward the tower. Up there, the ringer's silhouette moves behind a narrow slit window, tugging the rope with mechanical grace. It's strange how that one man's arms decide everyone's fate, when to eat, when to pray, when to rest. You finish your apple, toss the core toward a pig that's happily rooting near the gutter, and stretch your arms. The day feels properly awake now. Kids chase each other, dogs bark, the clatter of trade rises again. Somewhere a man shouts about fresh eel pies, and another advertises a new kind of comb fit for a lady. But the bell keeps whispering beneath it all. You can't unhear it anymore. It's like a heartbeat that's not your own. The longer you live here, the more you realize that everything faith, food, friendship moves in its rhythm. Even your thoughts start sinking to it. You notice a group of women carrying baskets of herbs, heading toward the cloister garden. They move like a wave, skirts brushing the grass. Benedicite one murmurs as she passes. You nod back awkwardly. That's your new morning ritual. One bell for waking, one for praying, one for working. And somewhere in between, a stolen breath of peace before the next clang tears it away again. There's a rumor floating around that somewhere far south, in an Italian monastery, they're rebuilding a clock that can measure time without sound gears and weights instead of bells and men. Some villagers laugh at the idea. Others whisper that it's heresy. Only God marks the hours, they say. And his voice is metal. You imagine what it would feel like to live by silent numbers instead of echoing chimes. Probably unsettling, like breathing underwater. A sudden gust of wind pushes through the square, making the hanging cloths flap like banners. The bell gives a faint, accidental jingle jest, a tremor, but enough to make everyone look up. For a moment, the crowd falls quiet. Even the pigs stop snuffling. You realize how deeply everyone's tuned to that sound. When the bell speaks, the world listens. When it doesn't, the world holds its breath. The priest notices too. He crosses himself quickly, muttering something about a sign. You're not sure what it means, but the silence that follows feels oddly charged, like the air before lightning. Then the ringer tugs the rope again, and the proper tone returns, smooth, steady, reassuring. Everyone exhales. The market noise resumes. You let the relief wash over you. Still, as you walk away toward the path that leads to the fields, a small part of you keeps glancing back at that tower. You wonder how long it's been standing there, how many lives it's measured, how many secrets it's overheard. You think of the countless mornings before yours, all beginning with the same sound. The bell rules time, but time also shapes the bell. Each ring carries a little more history, a faint whisper of every soul that's ever listened. And so, with another distant toll marking the late morning, you hoist your pack higher, step into the sunlight, and march toward labor. The day has properly begun, and the bell's invisible leash tugs you forward once more. The field stretches out before you like a green-brown ocean, and the morning sun has finally wrestled its way above the horizon, spilling gold across the furrows. You take a deep breath of the earthy scent-wet soil, manure, and the faint sweetness of newly sprouted wheat, and immediately feel the tug of the bell in your chest again. The third or fourth toll of the day isn't just a signal anymore. It's a drumbeat that pushes your body into motion. You shoulder your tools, the wooden handle of your plow rough against your palms, and trudge forward, following the rhythm dictated by the tower above. Work begins precisely on the bell's command. The oxen snort, shifting their weight against the harness, and you feel the tension in the yoke transfer to your shoulders. Every step is measured, every swing of the plow aligned with the echoes of the bell. Miss a rhythm, and the furrow wobbles. Too slow, and the oxen snort in protest. Somehow, even after centuries, the villagers have internalized the metal metronome that governs the day. You notice how strange it is to be simultaneously free and constrained by a sound. Historians still argue whether medieval laborers actually felt the time, or if they merely obeyed it, moving as gears in a giant clockwork. Either way, the bell's authority is undeniable. You glance across the fields. Other peasants work in similar unison, women dragging carts of manure, men scattering seeds. Children running errands for adults with more dexterity than sense. Some pause to glance at the tower for reassurance. The bell rings again, louder this time, signaling a brief shift in the workday. Perhaps it's time to water the fields or to swap places with a neighbor. You shrug into your work, letting the iron clang flow through your movements. It's mesmerizing, almost meditative. The way the rope vibrates above, tugged by the bell ringer's steady arms, is like a heartbeat you didn't know you were counting. You wipe sweat from your brow, the midday sun now pressing hard, and notice the faint shimmer in the distance, a field of barley catching the light. A bird swoops low, almost grazing your shoulder, startled by the bell's last toll. In that instant, you realize that nature and human effort are intertwined under the bell's governance. Even the geese, previously annoying and loud, fall silent when it rings, like a hush descending upon everything. The fieldwork isn't just toil, it's a symphony orchestrated by the bell. The ringer's skill determines when you switch tasks, when lunch is allowed, and even when a quick break is tolerated. You remember old tales that claimed the bell could predict the weather. If it rang a dull note, rain was coming. If it rang bright, the sun would continue. You doubt the accuracy, but admit that after years of listening, the pitch can feel like an omen. One eccentric chronicler even insisted that the bell's vibrations could keep certain pests away from crops. Probably nonsense, but it's charming to imagine your livelihood protected by nothing but sound. At the edge of the field, you meet a fellow laborer named Joris. He's an older man with a crooked back and hands as rough as bark. "Hear that?" he asks, nodding toward the tower. "The bell's telling us when to plow, but it also knows who's slacking." You grin? Do you think it gossips? He laughs, a sound that carries across the field like rolling stones. Maybe not gossip, but it remembers. I swear, it knows when you've been lazy. You can almost picture the bell with a tiny memory, ticking away secrets of centuries past. By mid-morning, the sun is climbing steadily, and the bell tolls for another shift. You stop to take a sip from your water skin, grateful for the brief respite. Other villagers do the same, glancing upward at the tower. Even the simplest task, carrying a bucket of water, is guided by its authority. There's a strange comfort in that. Without it, your movements would feel aimless, lost in a vast landscape of mud and toil. You remember the quirky tales you overheard as a child. Some said the bell could ward off lightning, others that it had a minor mind of its own, ringing when a villager sinned or plotted mischief. You laugh at the memory, thinking about your neighbor Bertram, who once tried to sneak ale into the fields during harvest. The bell seemed to mock him, pealing louder than usual, as if laughing at the mischief. Maybe it was coincidence, or maybe the tower had a subtle sense of humor. As the morning advances, the rhythm becomes hypnotic. You swing the plow, pull on the rope, adjust the oxen, and listen. The cadence of labor is mirrored in the cadence of sound. Every toll signals a subtle shift: pause, turn, swap, or rest. Missing one bell could throw the day into chaos. Historians debate whether this strict adherence was purely practical or an early form of social control, a sonic hierarchy that kept everyone in line. Either way, you can't deny the effectiveness. You glance toward the horizon again. Clouds are gathering, and a slight breeze carries the scent of impending rain. Another toll from the tower seems sharper than usual, cutting through the air. You look to your neighbors. They nod knowingly, already adjusting their pace and covering their tools. The bell is more than sound. It's a weather gauge, a taskmaster, and an overseer all at once. By late morning, the repetitive motion begins to blur your sense of time. You stop for a moment, leaning on the plow, and watch a group of children delivering water to the fields. Their small hands struggle with heavy buckets, yet they move in rhythm with the distant bell. Even they are trained by its authority. It occurs to you that the bell teaches more than time. It teaches discipline, coordination, and awareness of the world as a shared entity. A faint memory surfaces, a local story about a farmer who once ignored the bell to chase a hare. The tale ends predictably. He returned hours later to find the oxen had wandered, the furrows uneven and the reeve glaring. The moral was always the same. The bell comes first, desire second. You suppress a smile. Some lessons never change. The sun climbs higher, and you wipe sweat from your brow, the rhythm of work and sound merging into a single, continuous flow. Occasionally, you hear a note out of place, heavier clang or a tremor in the rope hand. You glance upward, imagining the bell ringer adjusting his grip or pausing for a breath. It's a subtle reminder that even the bell, seemingly eternal and unyielding, relies on human effort. By midday, the first meal break arrives. The bell tolls, long and sonorous, calling everyone to pause. You sit under the shade of a tree, unwrapping your small ration of bread and cheese, listening as the village collectively exhales. The bell doesn't just dictate work. It dictates rest, turning the mundane act of eating into a shared ritual. Some villagers laugh, others sigh, all tuned to the same auditory signal. You notice how sound flows through the village differently depending on the weather. On clear days, the bell carries across the fields, crisp and commanding. On humid mornings like this, the tone is softer, more rounded, rolling like distant thunder. It affects mood, pace, even conversation. People talk faster or slower depending on the resonance they hear. Fringe scholars suggest this might be a kind of medieval psychoacoustic sound-shaping behavior in subtle ways. You shake your head with amusement. After the break, the bell resumes its role as overseer. Work picks up again, this time with heavier tasks, stirring the soil for planting, repairing fences, tending animals. You notice the subtle cues embedded in its tone. A quick double toll signals water the garden, a slow triple toll signals plowing change. The villagers move almost instinctively, attuned like a single organism responding to an internal drum. Joris leans over your shoulder, muttering, "The bell is a cruel master, but a fair one." You nod. There's truth in that. It punishes laziness and rewards diligence, yet it never forgets a rhythm, never falters, and never plays favorites. It's impartial, impartiality carved in bronze and sound waves. By the late morning, clouds darken, signaling potential rain. The bell ringer tugs the rope with deliberate force, and the sound bounces across the fields, warning everyone to secure their tools and livestock. Some children scurry for cover, while adults double their pace, finishing furrows, tying hay, or covering grain. The bell transforms again, now an alarm, a guardian, and an urgent voice. You glance at the horizon and realize how dependent life is on this simple instrument. Without it, you'd wander aimlessly, lost in both time and task. Even in the briefest pause, you feel the weight of its absence. It's more than sound. It's life itself, shaped and measured by resonant bronze swinging overhead. Historians still argue whether the bell's influence was purely practical or imbued with a mystical sense of authority. From where you stand, it's both. As the final toll before midday rings, the fields grow quiet. Villagers align for the next series of tasks. Even the oxen seem to sense the shift, shifting weight and nudging their partners in readiness. You take a deep breath, feeling your muscles ache, but also a strange sense of fulfillment. The bell has not just marked the passage of time. It has given rhythm, structure, and meaning to the day. Even as you pause to glance up at the tower, you can't escape the thought that life is tethered to its sound. It governs labor, leisure, faith, and social order. And you, like everyone else, are a participant in its orchestration, willingly bound by the iron cadence of history. By the time you've hauled the last cart of hay into the barn, the sun has risen high, burning through the mist and turning the village into a mosaic of shadows and light. The bell's rhythm has shifted again, less about work now, more about gossip, errands, and the peculiar human chaos that fills the mid-morning hours. Its authority extends beyond duty, beyond labor, into the subtler realm of social order. You trudge along the cobbled lanes, noticing how the sound of the bell bends itself around every conversation, every shouted insult, every whispered secret. It's almost as if the tower itself is eavesdropping, curating the flow of information, nudging stories into the right ears at the right time. The first clue comes in the form of Mrs. Tilda, who's fussing with a crooked fence near the edge of the village. She hisses at a neighbor for letting his goat nibble her newly planted herbs. "If the bell tolled any louder, it'd wake the dead," she mutters. Her words are bitter, but strangely affectionate. You wonder if she means the bell or the whole system it represents. Regardless, everyone around listens. Some nod, some roll their eyes, all mindful of the bell's unseen governance. Gossip moves as swiftly as water here, carried along by foot traffic, shouted warnings, and the occasional note pinned to a post. The bell functions as a sort of acoustic messenger, framing the moments when news is appropriate, when it spreads fastest. A farmer returning from the distant fields might pause mid-step to announce a missing cow, and within the time it takes for the next toll, 3 neighbors know the story. Historians still argue whether this rapid communication was intentional or just an emergent property of life under the bell's reign. Either way, the effect is undeniable. The village becomes a living network of sound and story. You find yourself passing the tavern, where the innkeeper leans out a window, calling greetings to anyone who will listen. His voice rises to meet the bell's tone, and suddenly it becomes a counterpoint rather than a command. Inside, patrons squint toward the street, mugs in hand, each eager to overhear a snippet of news before the bell strikes again. Even the barmaid, carrying a tray of ale to the back tables, moves in subtle rhythm with the fading echo of the bell. You realize this is no mere coincidence. It's as if the bell has become an unseen conductor, orchestrating the everyday drama of the village. You continue along the path toward the central square, where a small crowd has gathered. A traveling peddler is showing off colorful textiles, and children circle, tugging at corners of cloth, shouting for attention. The bell rings, punctuating a pause in conversation, and suddenly the crowd freezes. Transactions halt mid-sentence. Eyes flick to the tower, as if awaiting permission to continue. You smirk at the absurdity of it, the idea that a lump of metal in a tower can wield more influence than the mayor himself. Yet here, in this patchwork of houses and hedges, it does. The peculiar power of the bell isn't just about timing, it's psychological. A few scholars suggest medieval communities internalized its authority so deeply that even subtle shifts in tone could influence mood and decision-making. A higher-pitched toll might energize, a deeper clang might caution or depress. Some fringe observers even claim the bell could sense. Misbehavior, an idea you dismiss, but can entirely ignore, given the uncanny timing of certain peals. You glance at a group of teenagers who've been sneaking apples from a cart. As if on cue, the bell resonates, and they scatter. Coincidence? Perhaps, but it feels like the tower is smirking at them. Passing the blacksmith's forge, you notice how the bell's rhythm integrates with work. Hammers strike anvils in time, sparks flying like synchronized fireworks. The ringer's careful control of pitch and tempo maintains an unspoken harmony between labor and sound, almost like a conductor guiding an orchestra that can't read sheet music. The bell doesn't merely dictate, it choreographs, and everyone knows the rules. Miss a cue, and you feel it not only in the disapproval of others, but in a faint sense of unease, as if the tower itself is disappointed. You wander toward the stream at the village's edge, listening to the water gurgle over stones, thinking about the way news travels here. The bell's chimes signal more than work. They mark attention, instruct when to gather, and delineate moments for observation. A neighbor approaches, breathless and urgent. "Did you hear?" Ati whispers. You lean in. Atia has wandered into the wheat field, trampling several furrows. The bell had already rung twice, but the timing seems to have carried the information faster than foot travel alone. It's almost like an early networked alert system, and for a fleeting moment, you marvel at its ingenuity. To watch the children playing near the water. Their laughter rings bright and careless, a counterpoint to the iron tolls overhead. Yet even they pause when the bell chimes, their games momentarily suspended. It's clear that sound shapes behavior here far more than you imagined. You wonder if any of them will grow up questioning the authority of the tower, or if the rhythm will become so ingrained that it feels as natural as breathing. A brief memory surfaces. Last harvest, a neighbor tried to spread a rumor that the reeve was taking extra grain. The bell tolled at a slightly unusual pitch that some say it was the ringer. Distracted or tired, but the villagers immediately sensed disruption. They gathered, argued, and restored order before the rumor could fester. Coincidence? Perhaps, yet you can't shake the feeling that the bell was part of the process, an arbiter not only of time, but of social equilibrium. By noon, the pace of village life begins to shift again. Market traffic slows, carts return to yards, and the midday toll signals another break. People collect for water, food, and a moment of rest. Even the animals adjust their routines. Chickens cluck in clusters, sheep nibble more cautiously, and dogs find shady spots, ears twitching at every reverberation. You pause, wiping dirt from your hands, noticing how all of life seems subtly coordinated under the bell's dominion. A quirky story drifts into your mind. Some villagers claimed that the bell could chase away misfortune by pealing in certain patterns. Ring it 3 times fast, and the storms might turn. Ring it twice slow, and disputes could cool. You smile at the absurdity, imagining a modern-day office building where HR rings a bell to prevent conflict or ward off bad spreadsheets. Still, the belief seems to have been sincere enough to affect behavior, which is more than a few contemporary managers can claim. The bell continues to rule the village, not with threats or harsh words, but with presence. Its influence is subtle, yet absolute. By observing the chimes, you understand when to gather, when to disperse, and even when to anticipate trouble. Historians still argue whether the power was magical, spiritual, or strictly social, but standing here, feeling the vibrations in your chest, it seems all 3 at once. As the villagers finish their midday tasks, the bell tolls again, signaling the next stage of work. You join the line of men and women moving toward field maintenance, haystacking, and fence repairs. Each motion is synchronized, each task flowing in time with the resonant voice above. Even minor disputes pause, temporarily suspended by the bell's authority. You can't help but admire its efficiency as sound, guiding hundreds of lives without raising a finger. By mid-afternoon, you notice the bell's effect on interpersonal dynamics. Couples glance up to coordinate chores. Neighbors nod when completing mutual tasks. And strangers pause briefly to acknowledge one another. Its voice creates an unspoken social contract. Timing, attention, and cooperation, dictated not by force, but by sound. You marvel at how deeply ingrained it is. Finally, you pause under a tree, arms aching from labor, and watch as a few elderly villagers gather in the square, telling tales of long ago. Their stories unfold in rhythm with the bell, punctuated by its tolls like natural punctuation. You can see how the tower has shaped not just labor, but culture, memory, and community. Its influence is omnipresent yet gentle, a constant pulse in the heartbeat of daily life. You take a deep breath, listening to the mixture of human chatter, animal sounds, and the lingering echo of the bell. The village moves as one organism under its guidance, every action and reaction choreographed by the resonant bronze overhead. You realize that the bell is not just an object. It is a living, breathing presence, shaping life itself in 1,000 imperceptible ways. And as you prepare for the next round of work, you can't help but smile. The bell may be metal and rope, but its power is absolute. It coordinates, informs, governs, and even entertains. Life without it would be chaotic, aimless, and silent. And for now, you are perfectly content to move, speak, and breathe in its rhythm, a single note in its enduring symphony. By the time the festival bell begins its first joyful toll, the village has transformed. Streets once thick with the dust of labor are now alive with color, laughter, and the scent of fried bread and roasted meats. You trudge through the square, your feet crunching over stray straw and spilled ale. And you realize that the same bell that dictated toil now summons celebration. Its tone is brighter, almost musical, carrying excitement in every reverberation. You grin despite yourself. The bell doesn't just mark time, it marks life. And right now, life is a carnival. The feast day is in honor of St. Aldrich, a local patron whose miracles are debated as fervently as whether the bell itself possesses secret powers. Merchants from neighboring hamlets arrive, carts laden with colorful fabrics, hand-carved toys, and a few oddities that make you tilt your head in curiosity. A stuffed fox that seems almost alive, a tiny mechanical bird that chirps when the wind blows, and a collection of glass bottles shimmering like captured rainbows. The bell rings again, calling attention to the main square. Every ear tunes instinctively to the tone, like a conductor lifting a baton. You probably won't survive this if you ignore the rhythm. The village doesn't just move, it moves in unison. You weave past booths, catching snippets of conversation, laughter, and gossip. A group of children squeals at a puppet show, their excitement mirrored by the quick, playful tolls of the festival bell. It seems as if the tower itself participates in the merriment, striking lighter and faster than during labor hours. You think about how the bell's dual personality shapes everything from solemn mass to raucous celebration and marvel at its influence. Historians still argue whether bells were intentionally used to regulate festival behavior, or if the villagers' synchronization was an emergent habit. Either way, it's effective. The aroma of roasted meats fills your nostrils. A butcher's apprentice waves a hunk of sizzling pork, and you can't resist purchasing a small portion, greasy fingers and all. Nearby, a woman sells pies so sweet and spiced you feel the sugar coating your tongue before you even bite. Every sound, children shouting, vendors hawking. The occasional clash of a dropped pannies framed against the ever-present chime of the bell. It dictates tempo, cues, and even when someone must pay attention. You pause to watch a trio of minstrels performing on a raised wooden platform. Their instruments flutes, and a hand drum echo with the bell's rhythm, each note dancing around the tolls like partners in a carefully arranged dance. A quirky tradition surfaces in your memory. Villagers sometimes believed that the bell could taste joy. The louder and more harmonious the day's laughter, the more vibrant the tone it produced. Some even insisted that the bell's metal shimmered slightly in response to merriment, a secret blessing for those paying attention. You glance at the bronze surface high in the tower, wondering if it glints differently now, bright with collective cheer. Perhaps the rumor is absurd, but in the context of the festival, it feels entirely plausible. You move toward the center of the square, where a large maypole has been erected. Colorful ribbons ripple in the breeze, and children run around it, weaving in and out in time with a melody punctuated by the bell. Adults join reluctantly at first, then with more gusto as the rhythm embeds itself in their feet. Even the oldest villagers, bent with years, participate, their movements imperfect but joyful. The bell's voice orchestrates not just labor, but play, proving that control and pleasure can exist under the same sound. As you wander, a juggler catches your eye. He tosses flaming clubs high, catching each one with precision, sweat glinting on his brow. The bell rings again, longer and more sonorous than before, signaling a change in schedule. It's time for the storytelling contest. Villagers gather, leaning against stalls and trees, forming a semicircle. A storyteller begins, his voice weaving tales of knights, dragons, and distant kingdoms. Each time the bell chimes mid-story, the listeners adjust their attention, holding suspense. The tension created by metal guiding their imaginations. You notice a man at the back of the crowd, laughing too loudly, drawing glares from those nearby. The bell tolls once more, sharp and commanding, and even he quiets, almost imperceptibly. Its authority persists even amid revelry. Fringe scholars suggest that medieval bells were believed to regulate morality as much as time, a sonic law reinforcing social order even during celebration. Perhaps it's superstition, perhaps practicality, but the effect is real. Moving past the storyteller, you find yourself drawn to the fountain, where villagers dip hands, wash faces, or splash water at each other in gleeful abandon. You pause, splashing some water on your own face. Notice how the bell's high-pitched jubilation enhances the lightheartedness. It's remarkable. The same bell that once warned you of labor and storms now amplifies laughter and delight. Its presence is omnipresent, yet flexible, a symbol of continuity and adaptability. A small group of dancers forms near the inn. They spin and stomp in patterns that seem guided not just by the music, but by the bell's underlying pulse. Each movement, each turn, seems to correspond with a toll, invisible yet intuitive. You can't help but join briefly, feeling your own steps synchronized to a rhythm that predates you, and imagining how generations of villagers have experienced the same sensation. The bell is a living entity in the village, shaping motion, mood, and community cohesion. Someone shouts about a lost child, and a collective hush falls. The bell reacts, or so it seems, ringing in sharp, urgent bursts, sending heads swiveling, attention snapping toward the source. The child is quickly located near a cart, spilling apples, tears, and laughter intertwined. The bell's voice, like an invisible parent, directs the emergency with astonishing efficiency. You realize that even in chaos, the tower mediates, orchestrating a social ballet of action and reaction. You pause by a tent selling colorful ribbons and charms. The seller insists that the bell's blessing is contained in each ribbon, that tying one to a window frame will protect your home and livestock. You laugh. Taking one anyway feels fun, harmless superstition. The bell tolls again, long and melodic, marking the approach of the midday feast. Tables are set with long planks and benches, laden with bread, cheese, pies, and roasted meats. The crowd gathers in anticipation, the bell guiding their steps and focus. The feast is communal. You sit among villagers, sharing food and conversation. Between bites, the bell continues its rhythm, dictating when the next toast occurs, when speeches begin, and when songs are sung. Someone begins singing a ditty about a fox outsmarting a farmer. The crowd joins, voices rising, and the bell seems to join in, its vibrations adding depth to the human chorus. A scholarly debate floats through your mind. Did the medieval bell serve primarily a spiritual function, or was it social engineering? Standing here, tasting roasted pork and feeling the resonance in your chest, you suspect it's both. Children chase each other through the legs of adults, spilling water, scattering straw, their laughter punctuated by the bell's clarion notes. You notice a young couple sneaking toward the back of the square, hands brushing, hearts quickened by the rhythm. Even love is measured here, guided subtly by tolls, each ring marking time for courtship, flirtation, and stolen moments. You chuckle quietly, imagining someone today trying to synchronize a Tinder date with a bell tower. A sudden breeze carries the scent of roasted chestnuts from the far side of the square. A vendor shouts, waving his wares, and the bell responds with a playful series of short peals, as if approving the interruption. The air is thick with energy, community, and sound. Even the pigs, once confined to pens, grunt in appreciation or perhaps confusion, joining the festival unintentionally. You wander toward the edge of the square, pausing to watch a small group of jugglers practicing behind the main stalls. Each toss is punctuated by the bell's chime, their rhythm gradually aligning with the tower's authority. You marvel at how sound has become a universal conductor, synchronizing tasks, entertainment, and celebration. Fringe historians suggest that festival bells might have been deliberately tuned differently to influence mood. Faster, lighter tones for joy, deeper, slower ones for solemnity. It makes sense. Even in play, the bell controls the village. As afternoon approaches, the bell rings once more, announcing the transition from feasting to games, tug of war, sack races, and a curious attempt at archery for the children. You watch as villagers respond immediately, instinctively coordinating their actions. You can't escape the thought that the bell is more than just sound. It's a social contract, a moral compass, and a heartbeat, all in one. Finally, as the sun begins its slow descent and shadows stretch long across the square, the bell rings a final toll for the day's festivities. It's a long, resonant note that feels almost contemplative, as if reminding the village that joy, too, has its limits. The children run home reluctantly, adults finish their last bites, and vendors pack up. The rhythm of the day, once dictated by toil, now transitions into reflection and restall under the same bronze authority. You stand in the fading light, stomach full, heart warmed by laughter and music, realizing that the bell has orchestrated yet another layer of village life. Work, worship, gossip, and celebration all flow from its voice. Without it, there would be chaos. With it, every action, every glance, every laugh is subtly guided, connected, and made meaningful. You can't help but marvel at the sheer power of bronze and rope, of a single sound shaping the heartbeat of an entire community. The afternoon sun begins to dip, casting long, golden shadows across the village lanes, and you trudge toward the barnyards to check on the animals before the evening bell calls the day to its next phase. The oxen are resting, tails flicking lazily at flies, and the chickens have finally settled into their coops, clucking softly in contentment. Even here, the bell maintains its unseen authority, signaling that labor is nearing an end and routines are shifting. You notice how each animal seems attuned, in its own instinctive way, to the same rhythm that governs human movement. It's not just people who respond, the village breathes together under the chime of the bell. You pause to scratch the back of a mule, feeling the coarse bristles under your fingers, and remember the morning's fieldwork. The way the bell orchestrated labor then, and again during the festival, now feels part of a larger symphony that structures all life here. Historians still argue whether the bell's influence was truly psychological or simply a reflection of habit ingrained over generations. Either way, there's no escaping it. Even the smallest gesture, pouring water for a pig, tying a sheep to a post, subtly timed by that resonant bronze above. Walking toward the central square, you pass a small group of women washing laundry in the village stream. Their laughter echoes against the stone walls, momentarily clashing with the bell's tolls before blending into a peculiar harmony. You notice the rhythm of scrubbing and dipping seems coordinated, almost instinctively, with the peal. Some fringe observers suggest that medieval villagers unconsciously synced manual labor to the bell, achieving both efficiency and an oddly satisfying sense of order. You shake your head, smiling at the notion, but can't deny that the sight feels orchestrated, elegant in its mundane grace. A cart rattles past, spilling a few stray ears of corn onto the lane. Children dart to scoop them up, laughing as the bell rings a sharper, urgent note. It's a warning, a cue to pay attention, and you marvel at how subtly the tower's influence extends into both work and play. The chime seems to punctuate the day like punctuation in a story, and you realize how intertwined your own movements have become with its cadence. You stop at the apothecary, drawn in by the aroma of herbs, vinegar, and spices. The bell's toll, long and sonorous, nudges villagers to check their stock, exchange remedies, or gossip about who is sick and why. The apothecary's assistant waves a small bundle of dried lavender toward you. "Even the bell approves," he says, jokingly. You chuckle, imagining a village where the bronze in the tower offers judgment alongside guidance. There, as a quirky legend about bells being able to influence health, told them thrice at sunrise, and diseases would retreat. Modern scholars dismiss it. But standing here, listening to the deep, resonant tone, it's not hard to see how belief reinforced obedience and routine. Continuing along the path, you notice the blacksmith hammering steadily, sparks flying in perfect time with the tower's toll. Even the animals in the stables seem to pause slightly with each strike of bronze. A subtle harmony exists between human effort, animal instinct, and the mechanical force of sound. The bell, far above, shapes all these interactions without ever appearing to interfere directly. It's an invisible arbiter, orchestrating a balance between work, rest, and social behavior. By mid-afternoon, shadows stretch long across the village green. You pause near a group of boys playing a rudimentary ball game. Their movements erratic, yet rhythmically tethered to the occasional peal. The bell rings a deliberate sequence, and even the youngest children adjust, pausing, scattering, or cheering in alignment with the sound. You watch, fascinated by how deeply ingrained its influence is. Even those who cannot read or comprehend time formally obey the auditory structure. A neighbor hurries past, muttering about repairing a fence before the evening meal. The bell tolls again, sharper this time, signaling urgency. It's as if the tower itself warns of impending responsibilities, prompting villagers to adjust without instruction. Fringe historians suggest this was an intentional feature. Bells as social regulators, instilling discipline through repeated auditory cues. You shake your head, thinking about modern alarms and notifications, and marvel at the timeless efficacy of a swinging bell. The evening chores begin in earnest, feeding chickens, collecting eggs, mending nets, and preparing grain for storage. The bell chimes once, long and steady, and you feel a peculiar sense of shared awareness. Everyone is moving together, yet independently, a mosaic of action, all synchronized under a single sound. You remember a story about a farmer who ignored the evening toll and accidentally left a gate open. His cows wandered into the barley fields, chaos ensued, and the bell's authority became legend in the retelling. It's amusing, yet it underlines a deeper truth. The bell's power isn't just practical, it's cultural, woven into memory and expectation. By late afternoon, the sun's warmth softens, and the air carries the mingled scents of wood smoke, herbs, and the day's exertion. You take a moment to lean against a fence post, watching the villagers move about, each guided by the subtle command of the bell. You feel connected to them, to the rhythm, to the passage of time made tangible through sound. Historians still argue whether such synchronization was consciously recognized by the villagers or simply an emergent behavior. But standing here, the effect is palpable. Life in the village is inseparable from the bell's presence. A sudden gust of wind shakes a few loose papers pinned to a notice board, fluttering them to the ground. You notice a small sketch of a bell ringer from decades ago. Rope in hand, muscles taut, frozen mid-tug. It's a reminder that the tower's influence relies on human effort as much as tradition. Each toll, each vibration, each nuance of tone requires someone to pull the rope, to breathe, to coordinate. The bell is both mechanical and mystical, mundane and commanding. Moving toward the water trough, you pause to watch a group of women chatting while washing linen. They giggle, but even their laughter is punctuated by the bell's toll, their pauses and gestures seemingly aligned with the rhythm. You remember a quirky note from your readings? Some villagers believed that the bell could correct misbehavior merely by tolling at unexpected intervals. Children would stop squabbling, dogs would cease barking, and adults would reconsider arguments. Perhaps superstition, perhaps coincidence, but effective nonetheless. The sun continues its slow descent, and the evening shadows stretch longer across the village. You notice how the bell now serves as a temporal anchor. It signals the closing of shops, the preparation of evening meals, the tending of livestock. Even leisure activities are subtly framed by its authority. You catch a glimpse of two boys finishing a playful scuffle, stopping abruptly as the tone resonates, nodding to one another as if acknowledging the bell's verdict. A familiar feeling rises as you approach the central square. The bell's presence is both comforting and commanding. It mediates the transition between day and evening, ensuring that life flows smoothly without the need for constant supervision. You marvel at how much authority a single tower exerts not through fear, but through consistent, predictable, and resonant sound. Fringe scholars might call it medieval auditory governance, but you simply experience it as life itself, punctuated by bronze and rope. By late evening, preparations for the night begin. Hearth fires glow, animals are secured, and the villagers gather for their final communal tasks. The bell tolls deliberately, rhythmically, each note carrying both information and reassurance. You notice that even the most distracted or tired villagers adjust instinctively, a subtle nod to the power of learned behavior reinforced over generations. The bell is now a master of habit, a curator of daily life. You pause near the inn, watching the last of the market wagons depart. The bell tolls once more, low and steady, signaling the day's labor is truly over. Children scurry home, parents collect tools, and the village settles into a quieter, reflective pace. Even now, the bell's influence persists, marking the rhythm of the final activities, subtly guiding movement, mood, and attention. You sit for a moment on a wooden bench, listening to the echoes fading into the distance. The bell has dictated work, rest, play, and now reflection. Its authority has been absolute all day, shaping every action, thought, and social interaction. You realize that living under its cadence has created a village both orderly and harmonious. Chaotic yet coordinated, alive in a rhythm older than any single person present. As the sun dips below the horizon, you hear the final toll of the evening, a long, sonorous note that seems to carry warmth, warning, and comfort all at once. You stand, stretching tired muscles, and take a deep breath. The bell has guided your day, framed your actions, and even shaped your perceptions. Life here is inseparable from its sound, a symphony of routine and ritual conducted from above. You feel a strange gratitude for its presence, knowing that tomorrow and every day after, the rhythm will continue. Steady and unyielding, shaping the village in ways both subtle and profound. The afternoon sun begins to dip, casting long, golden shadows across the village lanes, and you trudge toward the barnyards to check on the animals before the evening bell calls the day to its next phase. The oxen are resting, tails flicking lazily at flies, and the chickens have finally settled into their coops, clucking softly in contentment. Even here, the bell maintains its unseen authority, signaling that labor is nearing an end and routines are shifting. You notice how each animal seems attuned, in its own instinctive way, to the same rhythm that governs human movement. It's not just people who respond, the village breathes together under the chime of the bell. You pause to scratch the back of a mule, feeling the coarse bristles under your fingers, and remember the morning's fieldwork. The way the bell orchestrated labor then, and again during the festival, now feels part of a larger symphony that structures all life here. Historians still argue whether the bell's influence was truly psychological or simply a reflection of habit ingrained over generations. Either way, there's no escaping it. Even the smallest gesture, pouring water for a pig, tying a sheep to a post, subtly timed by that resonant bronze above. Walking toward the central square, you pass a small group of women washing laundry in the village stream. Their laughter echoes against the stone walls, momentarily clashing with the bell's tolls before blending into a peculiar harmony. You notice the rhythm of scrubbing and dipping seems coordinated, almost instinctively, with the peal. Some fringe observers suggest that medieval villagers unconsciously synced manual labor to the bell, achieving both efficiency and an oddly satisfying sense of order. You shake your head, smiling at the notion, but can't deny that the sight feels orchestrated, elegant in its mundane grace. A cart rattles past, spilling a few stray ears of corn onto the lane. Children dart to scoop them up, laughing as the bell rings a sharper, urgent note. It's a warning, a cue to pay attention, and you marvel at how subtly the tower's influence extends into both work and play. The chime seems to punctuate the day like punctuation in a story, and you realize how intertwined your own movements have become with its cadence. You stop at the apothecary, drawn in by the aroma of herbs, vinegar, and spices. The bell's toll, long and sonorous, nudges villagers to check their stock, exchange remedies, or gossip about who is sick and why. The apothecary's assistant waves a small bundle of dried lavender toward you. "Even the bell approves," he says, jokingly. You chuckle, imagining a village where the bronze in the tower offers judgment alongside guidance. There, as a quirky legend about bells being able to influence health, told them thrice at sunrise, and diseases would retreat. Modern scholars dismiss it. But standing here, listening to the deep, resonant tone, it's not hard to see how belief reinforced obedience and routine. Continuing along the path, you notice the blacksmith hammering steadily, sparks flying in perfect time with the tower's toll. Even the animals in the stables seem to pause slightly with each strike of bronze. A subtle harmony exists between human effort, animal instinct, and the mechanical force of sound. The bell, far above, shapes all these interactions without ever appearing to interfere directly. It's an invisible arbiter, orchestrating a balance between work, rest, and social behavior. By mid-afternoon, shadows stretch long across the village green. You pause near a group of boys playing a rudimentary ball game. Their movements erratic, yet rhythmically tethered to the occasional peal. The bell rings a deliberate sequence, and even the youngest children adjust, pausing, scattering, or cheering in alignment with the sound. You watch, fascinated by how deeply ingrained its influence is. Even those who cannot read or comprehend time formally obey the auditory structure. A neighbor hurries past, muttering about repairing a fence before the evening meal. The bell tolls again, sharper this time, signaling urgency. It's as if the tower itself warns of impending responsibilities, prompting villagers to adjust without instruction. Fringe historians suggest this was an intentional feature. Bells as social regulators, instilling discipline through repeated auditory cues. You shake your head, thinking about modern alarms and notifications, and marvel at the timeless efficacy of a swinging bell. The evening chores begin in earnest, feeding chickens, collecting eggs, mending nets, and preparing grain for storage. The bell chimes once, long and steady, and you feel a peculiar sense of shared awareness. Everyone is moving together, yet independently, a mosaic of action, all synchronized under a single sound. You remember a story about a farmer who ignored the evening toll and accidentally left a gate open. His cows wandered into the barley fields, chaos ensued, and the bell's authority became legend in the retelling. It's amusing, yet it underlines a deeper truth. The bell's power isn't just practical, it's cultural, woven into memory and expectation. By late afternoon, the sun's warmth softens, and the air carries the mingled scents of wood smoke, herbs, and the day's exertion. You take a moment to lean against a fence post, watching the villagers move about, each guided by the subtle command of the bell. You feel connected to them, to the rhythm, to the passage of time made tangible through sound. Historians still argue whether such synchronization was consciously recognized by the villagers or simply an emergent behavior. But standing here, the effect is palpable. Life in the village is inseparable from the bell's presence. A sudden gust of wind shakes a few loose papers pinned to a notice board, fluttering them to the ground. You notice a small sketch of a bell ringer from decades ago. Rope in hand, muscles taut, frozen mid-tug. It's a reminder that the tower's influence relies on human effort as much as tradition. Each toll, each vibration, each nuance of tone requires someone to pull the rope, to breathe, to coordinate. The bell is both mechanical and mystical, mundane and commanding. Moving toward the water trough, you pause to watch a group of women chatting while washing linen. They giggle, but even their laughter is punctuated by the bell's toll, their pauses and gestures seemingly aligned with the rhythm. You remember a quirky note from your readings? Some villagers believed that the bell could correct misbehavior merely by tolling at unexpected intervals. Children would stop squabbling, dogs would cease barking, and adults would reconsider arguments. Perhaps superstition, perhaps coincidence, but effective nonetheless. The sun continues its slow descent, and the evening shadows stretch longer across the village. You notice how the bell now serves as a temporal anchor. It signals the closing of shops, the preparation of evening meals, the tending of livestock. Even leisure activities are subtly framed by its authority. You catch a glimpse of two boys finishing a playful scuffle, stopping abruptly as the tone resonates, nodding to one another as if acknowledging the bell's verdict. A familiar feeling rises as you approach the central square. The bell's presence is both comforting and commanding. It mediates the transition between day and evening, ensuring that life flows smoothly without the need for constant supervision. You marvel at how much authority a single tower exerts not through fear, but through consistent, predictable, and resonant sound. Fringe scholars might call it medieval auditory governance, but you simply experience it as life itself, punctuated by bronze and rope. By late evening, preparations for the night begin. Hearth fires glow, animals are secured, and the villagers gather for their final communal tasks. The bell tolls deliberately, rhythmically, each note carrying both information and reassurance. You notice that even the most distracted or tired villagers adjust instinctively, a subtle nod to the power of learned behavior reinforced over generations. The bell is now a master of habit, a curator of daily life. You pause near the inn, watching the last of the market wagons depart. The bell tolls once more, low and steady, signaling the day's labor is truly over. Children scurry home, parents collect tools, and the village settles into a quieter, reflective pace. Even now, the bell's influence persists, marking the rhythm of the final activities, subtly guiding movement, mood, and attention. You sit for a moment on a wooden bench, listening to the echoes fading into the distance. The bell has dictated work, rest, play, and now reflection. Its authority has been absolute all day, shaping every action, thought, and social interaction. You realize that living under its cadence has created a village both orderly and harmonious. Chaotic yet coordinated, alive in a rhythm older than any single person present. As the sun dips below the horizon, you hear the final toll of the evening, a long, sonorous note that seems to carry warmth, warning, and comfort all at once. You stand, stretching tired muscles, and take a deep breath. The bell has guided your day, framed your actions, and even shaped your perceptions. Life here is inseparable from its sound, a symphony of routine and ritual conducted from above. You feel a strange gratitude for its presence, knowing that tomorrow and every day after, the rhythm will continue. Steady and unyielding, shaping the village in ways both subtle and profound. Night deepens over the village, wrapping lanes and rooftops in a soft, almost velvety darkness, and you trudge quietly toward the river that skirts the edge of town. The evening bell has tolled just once more, low and steady, signaling that the day's formal activities are ending, and that reflection, rest, and quiet domesticity now take center stage. You notice how even the wind seems to respond, rustling leaves in a tempo that almost matches the bell's fading resonance. The village has slowed, but not stopped. Every movement is deliberate, measured, and subtly governed by the bell's lingering authority. You pass the blacksmith's forge, now dark and silent except for a faint glow from the dying embers. Sparks no longer fly in rhythmic bursts, but the echo of the day's hammering lingers in your mind, coordinated as it was with the tower above. It's strange, thinking about how one bell, swung by a single ringer, can dictate the flow of energy across an entire community. Historians still argue whether these sound patterns were consciously designed to enhance productivity or if they emerged organically over centuries of human adaptation. Either way, there's no denying the psychological rhythm that continues to pulse beneath your feet. Walking along the riverbank, you observe the last villagers returning from tasks or social visits. Lanterns flicker, casting warm circles of light on the cobblestones. Even here, at the village's quiet periphery, the bell maintains its reach. A mother calls softly to a child, and you notice that both their steps and words unconsciously align with the bell's fading tone. Fringe scholars suggest that auditory cues like this were used to subtly instill discipline and coordination across the population behavioral. Training without anyone really realizing it. You shrugged at the thought, amused, and continue onward. The water in the river glints under the crescent moon, reflecting scattered sparks of lantern light. You pause to watch a pair of ducks paddling lazily along the current. With each low, measured toll of the bell, their ripples seem to echo the rhythm, a whimsical reminder that the tower's authority extends even to the smallest creatures. You remember reading a peculiar tale. Villagers once claimed that ducks or chickens would act more orderly if the bell rang at consistent intervals. Likely coincidence, but standing here, watching the gentle alignment, it feels uncanny. A breeze carries the scent of wood smoke and cooling earth. You notice a neighbor carrying a basket of freshly baked bread, moving slowly, almost ceremonially, as if the bell's fading toll guides not just timing but the mood of the evening. The weight of communal expectation is subtle but tangible. Everyone knows when to move, when to pause, when to nod or smile, all orchestrated by a single source of sound. The bell is a master of social nuance, a constant reminder that life follows rhythm. You approach the chapel again, now bathed in dim candlelight, and notice a few villagers lingering for late-night prayer. The bell tolls softly, signaling that the final devotions should begin, a gentle punctuation in the narrative of the day. You find a quiet spot to observe, appreciating how the same sound that once demanded labor now invites reflection and meditation. Historians still argue whether medieval bells were primarily religious instruments or social regulators cloaked in faith. Observing here, it feels indisputably both. From the shadows, children's laughter echoes faintly as a few mischievous youths play near the square, testing the limits of propriety. The bell tolls once, long and firm, and the children immediately pause, their games frozen mid-motion. You can't help but grin at the efficiency. Fringe anecdotes tell of children learning obedience almost entirely through auditory cues, play and discipline alike guided by bronze. You think about modern parenting alarms and reminders and shiver at the simplicity yet effectiveness of this medieval system. A stray cat slinks along the alleyways, its paws silent on the stone. The bell rings again, soft and deliberate. And for a moment, even the cat seems to hesitate, tail twitching, before continuing. You laugh softly, realizing the extent of the bell's authority. Humans, animals, even the atmosphere itself respond in subtle, subconscious ways. You probably won't survive this day without acknowledging the bell's power, but standing here, it feels oddly comforting rather than oppressive. You make your way past the village green, now almost empty. Lanterns cast a warm, uneven glow on the benches and stalls that had been vibrant only hours before. The bell tolls again, a long, slow note, signaling the final transition toward complete quiet. Villagers, even those still engaged in chores or last-minute tasks, adjust instantly, moving with a kind of collective, gentle precision. You notice a small group closing up the last market stall. Their motions synchronized without instruction, a testament to centuries of learned rhythm and communal habit. Sitting on a bench near the edge of the square, you take a deep breath, absorbing the layered sounds of night, the gentle gurgle of the river, the occasional hoot of an owl, the whisper of leaves, all framed by the bell's fading resonance. It's remarkable how a single instrument has guided not just work, celebration, and devotion, but also rest and reflection. The authority it wields is subtle, pervasive, and psychologically profound. A quirky memory surfaces. Decades ago, villagers believed the bell could ward off nightmares if tolled at certain intervals in the evening. You imagine a child tucking into bed, ears attuned to the gentle chimes above, feeling reassured. While the idea may seem absurd, it underscores the bell's multifaceted role: practical, social, spiritual, and even psychological. Standing here, you feel the truth of it, the comforting pulse of continuity threading through human life. You rise and walk toward the river's bend, where a few remaining villagers are preparing to head home. Lantern light dances across the water, and the bell tolls again, low and prolonged. You realize this is not just sound, it's a signal, a social contract, and a communal heartbeat. The day has cycled from labor to play to reflection, all under its unseen guidance. Fringe historians debate whether the bell's influence was cultural conditioning or instinctive obedience. Standing here, you feel both explanations merging seamlessly. The night air grows cooler, carrying scents of damp earth, burning firewood, and lingering baked bread. You pause to watch a couple of villagers crossing the bridge, moving deliberately in alignment with the bell's rhythm. Even their conversation seems moderated by the sound, quiet and purposeful. You marvel at the subtle, persistent authority, bronze and rope shaping not just action but tone, mood, and attention. A small group of elderly villagers sits near the square fountain, sharing stories and memories of past years. The bell tolls softly in the background, guiding pauses, emphasizing transitions, and even lending rhythm to their recollections. It's remarkable to witness oral tradition subtly synchronized to a mechanical instrument. You probably won't survive this level of coordination anywhere else, and yet it feels natural, comforting, almost familial. Moving slowly back toward your dwelling, you notice the quiet diligence of the last night chores, locking gates, tending hearths, securing livestock. Each motion is subtly reinforced by the bell, a reminder that order persists even in seeming solitude. You reflect on the day's cycles: labor, celebration, prayer, reflection, and rest, all orchestrated by the steady pulse above. At the edge of the village, the river glints under the moonlight, silver and serene. You pause, listening to the interplay of sound and night: the occasional owl, rustling leaves, gentle water flow, and the bell's final tolls. You realize that this sound has governed not just tasks, but rhythm, attention, emotion, and culture. It is at once subtle and commanding, mundane and magical, shaping every facet of life in a way that is deeply, profoundly human. The bell tolls one last time for the evening, long and resonant, marking the full transition into night. The villagers pause, acknowledging the signal, then disperse quietly. The day has ended under its watchful authority, and you feel a rare peace. Aware of the continuity and order it has imposed without coercion, its influence threads through work, play, devotion, and rest, linking generations in a shared rhythm that is almost sacred. You finally settle on your own doorstep, stretching tired muscles and breathing in the cool night air. The last echoes of the bell fade into the darkness, leaving a lingering sense of presence. You understand that tomorrow and every day after, life will continue in this measured cadence, guided by bronze and rope, sound and habit, authority and comfort. The bell's voice is an invisible guardian, a cultural heartbeat, and a psychological anchor all at once. A presence that shapes reality in ways both subtle and undeniable. The first whispers of dawn brush the village with pale gold, and you trudge out of your small home to greet the morning once again. The air is crisp, carrying faint traces of last night's hearth smoke and the damp scent of dew-soaked fields. From the tower above, the bell begins its preliminary tolls, light and deliberate, marking the slow awakening of the village. You notice how even the chickens rouse from their coops in precise timing, scratching and clucking in response to the resonant vibrations. It's remarkable, the same bell that guided the day's festival, prayers and evening chores now orchestrates the subtle prelude to a new day. You pass the baker already at work, kneading dough while the bell chimes softly in the background. Flour dusts the air like morning mist, and the rhythmic sound seems to influence his movements, setting a pace almost imperceptibly tied to bronze. Historians still argue whether medieval bells were consciously used to structure labor efficiency, or if villagers simply absorbed the rhythm over generations. Standing here, observing the synchronicity of effort and sound, the effect is undeniable. The bell is both metronome and overseer, guiding action without uttering a single word. Across the lane, children emerge yawning from doorways, rubbing eyes and adjusting straw bedding. The bell chimes again, slightly higher this time, signaling that chores must commence soon. You remember a fringe tale about a village where the bell supposedly rang extra lightly during harvest season to prevent startling tired animals or anxious children. Whether true or myth, the idea emphasizes the subtle intelligence villagers ascribe to their bronze companion. It's both amusing and comforting to imagine a bell with moods capable of gentleness when needed. The blacksmith's apprentice is already at the forge, sparks flying in tempo with the tower's tolls. You probably won't survive this synchronization anywhere else. Even minor errors in timing are caught instinctively by the rhythm of sound. Every hammer strike, every movement of metal seems to fall naturally into alignment with the bell's cadence. Fringe historians suggest that such coordination may have enhanced efficiency and community cohesion, a testament to the practical intelligence embedded in daily ritual. You make your way toward the fields, where laborers are preparing for another day of planting and tending crops. The bell's voice resonates across the open landscape, calling attention, regulating breaks, and subtly dictating the tempo of work. Sweat already glistens on foreheads, and the early sun reflects off the furrows of soil. Each movement synchronized not merely by necessity, but by the enduring pulse of bronze. You notice that even the oxen seem to understand the rhythm, pausing or adjusting gait as if in conversation with the bell. A neighbor waves a greeting, and you respond, noting how conversational pauses are subconsciously guided by the tolling. People start sentences, finish tasks, and exchange glances in step with the same rhythm that coordinates labor and worship. Historians still debate whether the bell primarily influenced timekeeping, moral discipline, or social cohesion, but from your perspective, it does all three effortlessly. The bronze above dictates both action and awareness, shaping behavior in ways both obvious and subtle. You pause near the stream, watching women gather water in large wooden pails. Their laughter, chatter, and splashing are punctuated by the bell's tolls, creating a playful yet controlled rhythm. A quirky story floats to mind. Villagers once believed that if the bell tolled too late, water drawn from the stream would taste off or bring misfortune. Whether superstition or psychological reinforcement, it underscores the bell's symbolic power, not merely practical influence. You watch the women pause mid-laugh, instinctively aligning with the tolls, and marvel at the subtle authority of a swinging clapper. Further along, a group of children play a rudimentary game with a ball, their shouts bouncing across the village. The bell chimes a quick, lively sequence, and their movements adjust instantly. They freeze, restart, or cheer in alignment with the sound. You probably won't survive ignoring the bell here, even if you tried, because life itself is choreographed by its voice. Fringe scholars have suggested that such auditory cues served as an unspoken education system, teaching coordination, patience, and attention from an early age. Watching the game, it's impossible to dismiss that theory. As the sun rises higher, the bell's tone shifts subtly, guiding the villagers toward more strenuous tasks. Plowing, lifting, and hauling, even minor chores, like mending nets or tending livestock, are punctuated with precise attention to sound. The rhythm has become instinctual, a part of daily intuition. You pass the baker again, carrying loaves to the market stall, and notice how each step, gesture, and breath aligns with the toll. It's a masterclass in auditory governance, a living demonstration of communal rhythm. At the central square, preparations for the morning market are underway. Carts are arranged, produce displayed, and merchants begin calling out wares. The bell chimes in rapid melodic bursts, guiding arrivals and signaling readiness. Villagers pause to adjust positions, greet one another, or redirect tasks, all in harmony with the tower's authority. You note that even seemingly chaotic activity stall setup, or spring, children darting between legs is subtly moderated by bronze resonance. Historians still debate whether such coordination was intended or emergent, but here it's tangible, undeniable. You pause at the fountain to catch your breath, watching a young couple prepare to sell eggs. The bell tolls once, low and deliberate, signaling the start of the market. Their movements, from arranging baskets to exchanging coins, are instinctively synchronized. Fringe observers might argue that medieval bells served as a subtle form of social engineering, ensuring efficiency, fairness, and attention through sound alone. You smile at the thought, realizing that centuries of culture have been transmitted in the tone of bronze. A stray dog trots past, ears perked at the sound. You chuckle, noting how even animals respond in minute ways, pausing, shifting, or adjusting stride in alignment with the bell's message. Children scatter to chase it briefly, only to stop abruptly when the tower chimes sharply, a playful reminder that authority extends beyond humans. You think about how modern life is filled with invisible cues, notifications, timers, alarms, but nothing matches the elegance and subtlety of a single village bell, guiding multiple species through a shared rhythm. The market swells with activity. Vendors shout their wares, villagers haggle, and the smell of fresh bread, roasted meat, and hay permeates the square. The bell punctuates transactions, signaling breaks, shifts, and closing times. You probably won't survive missing a toll. It structures everything, from buying cheese to sharing gossip. Fringe accounts describe villagers adjusting the bell's timing to subtly influence market pace or social behavior. An early form of behavioral economics embedded in bronze. By late morning, the square is buzzing fully. The rhythm of commerce and social interaction harmonized under the tower's watchful presence. You watch as children run errands, adults negotiate deals, and elderly villagers share stories, all coordinated, consciously or unconsciously, by the bell's tone. Historians still debate whether medieval bells were primarily tools of practical timekeeping, moral regulation, or community cohesion. Standing here, observing, you feel that it was a seamless combination of all three. The sun climbs higher, scattering warm light across stalls and rooftops. The bell tolls again, longer and more sonorous, signaling a brief pause in the market. Vendors straighten wares, villagers take small breaths, and a few children pause mid-play, glancing toward the tower. Its sound is not only functional, but psychologically reinforcing, embedding rhythm into consciousness itself. You recall a fringe story of a bell that once rang spontaneously during a storm, guiding villagers to shelter before the first raindrops fell. Practical, mystical, or imagined, it reflects the profound trust placed in this singular authority. You wander past the bakery once more, noting that the baker's apprentice now lifts loaves with a subtle grace, in perfect step with the bell's mid-morning toll. Even minor gestures, pouring water, shifting flour sacks, exchanging coins are influenced by bronze resonance. You probably won't survive ignoring this pervasive rhythm, and you're beginning to appreciate why the villagers never try. The bell is not just timekeeper, it's rhythm, community, and cultural memory, all vibrating in metal above the square. The market begins to wind down, tolls signaling the approach of midday. You pause near the edge of the green, watching villagers adjust pace and attention, synchronizing tasks without overt instruction. Children gather around a storyteller. Elders sit in quiet observation, and the bell continues its guiding song. It is remarkable. Work, leisure, socialization, and memory all converge under a single auditory anchor. Historians still debate the precise functions, but standing here, the integration is impossible to ignore. By midday, the bell tolls with a long melodic note, signaling lunch and temporary respite. Villagers gather in small clusters, sharing food, laughter, and conversation. The bell's influence persists even here, structuring pauses, attention, and social etiquette. Fringe observers claim that rhythmic attention to bell tolls shaped not only daily life, but also community, culture, and cohesion across generations. You probably won't survive missing a beat. Bronze has a way of reminding you who's in charge. You sit on a bench, watching the square breathe as villagers settle for midday rest. The bell tolls again, lighter, more playful, as if acknowledging their brief reprieve. You reflect on how this single instrument shapes the village's rhythm from dawn to festival. Prayer to market, work to play, and realize that it has orchestrated generations of shared experience. Even the smallest moments, unnoticed gestures, and subtle adjustments are all touched by its presence. The afternoon drifts lazily into evening, and you trudge along familiar lanes, observing the village settling into the final stretch of its daily rhythm. The bell, perched high above, begins its measured tolls once more, calling attention to the winding down of work, signaling the approach of evening meals, and subtly guiding villagers toward rest. You notice the way the shadows stretch long and the air cools, carrying mingled scents of hay, baked bread, and smoldering hearths. Every movement you witnessed, the closing of shutters, the herding of livestock, the gentle conversations, feels choreographed by the subtle authority of bronze swinging above. A few late laborers are still finishing up fieldwork, their movements deliberate, yet unconsciously timed with the bell's tolls. Historians still argue whether villagers actively synchronized their tasks with the bell, or if coordination simply emerged over generations of habit. You lean against a fence post and watch an ox pause mid-step, head lifting as the sound resonates, following the same cadence as the humans guiding it. Fringe tales suggest that animals, like humans, were thought to respond to the bell's moral authority whimsical idea. Yet, amusing to imagine that livestock could be morally guided. Passing the baker and his apprentice, you notice them packing leftover loaves into baskets, movements steady and rhythmic. The bell's deeper tones now mark the transition from day labor to evening tasks, securing animals, collecting water, mending tools, and preparing for the night. You probably won't survive ignoring its guidance. Every step, glance, and gesture seems tethered to its authority. Even the simplest actions, lifting a pail, stacking firewood, fall into sync with the resounding bronze above. The village green is quieter now, save for the soft clatter of a cart returning from distant fields. Children who played earlier scurry home, occasionally pausing to adjust steps in deference to the tolls. The bell has become a shared rhythm that transcends age, experience, and task. You recall a quirky story from decades past? A mischievous child once tried to ignore the bell while herding geese, only to find the entire flock inexplicably paused at every toll. Superstition? Coincidence? Perhaps both, but it underscores the pervasive authority of sound in this place. You make your way to the apothecary, now closing for the evening. The scent of herbs and vinegar mingles with cooling stone and wood smoke. The bell's tone punctuates each step, and the villagers inside adjust their actions to match it, sweeping floors, closing jars, exchanging nods of farewell. Fringe historians argue that bells served as early instruments of social engineering, reinforcing discipline and attention across a population. Observing these subtle adjustments, you can see how effective auditory cues were at shaping behavior without overt enforcement. Crossing the cobbled square, you see the blacksmith packing away tools, sparks fading into the twilight. His apprentice mirrors his movements, both unconsciously timing, hammering, sweeping, and organizing with the bell's chimes. The bell's authority is a constant thread, linking labor, ritual, and social interaction seamlessly. Historians still debate whether this coordination was intentional, emergent, or culturally reinforced, but standing here feels like a natural lived experience, bronze and rope shaping the rhythm of life in subtle, profound ways. A soft wind carries the laughter of children returning from last errands, mingling with the clatter of livestock settling in pens. The bell tolls once more, signaling that night approaches and reminding all inhabitants to conclude tasks and gather. Even in the fading light, you notice how movement, conversation, and attention are still subtly synchronized with its sound. You probably won't survive ignoring it, and trying feels both impossible and oddly comforting. The bell's authority is gentle, yet undeniable. Near the river, the water glints under the emerging moonlight. Villagers pause briefly to fetch water, tend to livestock, or share quiet words. The bell's lower tones create a subtle harmony with natural sounds, rustling leaves, the occasional splash, the distant call of an owl. A fringe legend holds that ringing the bell thrice in the evening could summon protective spirits or ensure good dreams. While this may sound fanciful, it highlights how deeply the bell is interwoven with belief, culture, and ritual. Returning toward the central square, you observe a few elders sitting quietly, sharing memories of past days. Each anecdote, each gesture, each pause is subtly guided by the bell's chimes. You notice how even storytelling, an art of spontaneity, has been folded into the tower's rhythm, reinforcing attention, cohesion, and shared experience. Historians still argue whether such auditory cues actively shaped cognitive patterns, but here, their influence is palpable. Bronze as invisible teacher, guide, and communal heartbeat. The evening meal begins to stir. Smoke curls from hearths, pots simmer, and the smell of roasting meat mingles with herbs, drying on windowsills. The bell tolls again, signaling the close of labor and the approach of rest. Villagers move deliberately, securing animals, lighting lamps, and exchanging greetings in a rhythm synchronized to its resonance. Fringe anecdotes suggest that even domestic quarrels were subtly mitigated by the bell's interventions, A timely toll could pause rising tensions, guiding attention back to communal harmony. You smile, imagining the bell as a silent peacemaker, both practical and whimsical. As darkness deepens, lanterns cast pools of warm light on cobbled streets. You walk along familiar paths, noticing the quiet diligence of those finishing final chores, sweeping floors, checking gates, tending animals. The bell's steady authority underscores every action, a gentle reminder that the day has ended, yet that order persists. You probably won't survive missing a toll. It is the invisible thread tying together labor, ritual, leisure, and rest. Passing the chapel, you glimpse a few villagers lingering for evening prayers. The bell tolls softly, marking transitions between reflection and conclusion. The sound seems to breathe with the village itself. It's an auditory heartbeat that guides thought, behavior, and social interaction. Historians still debate the degree of intentionality in medieval bell usage, but from your perspective, its influence is omnipresent, practical, and deeply humane. Walking past the market square, now quiet and dimly lit, you see children tiptoeing home, their steps careful in alignment with the last tolls. Merchants secure goods, neighbors close windows, and the blacksmith extinguishes the final ember. Even the stray animals settle into pens or corners, seemingly responsive to the bell's rhythm. Fringe observers have long noted that the subtle coordination of entire communities through sound may have reinforced survival, social cohesion, and cultural transmission across generations. You finally arrive at the edge of the village, near the river's bend. The water gleams under moonlight, reflecting lanterns and starlight alike. You pause to breathe deeply, feeling the day's cycles work, play, ritual, reflection, rest embedded in memory and reinforced by the bell's constant guidance. You probably won't survive ignoring its authority, and you wouldn't want to. The bronze above has dictated your movements, attention, and even your perceptions, orchestrating a harmonious, lived experience. The final toll resonates slowly through the village, long and deliberate. You lean against a tree, listening to the lingering echoes as villagers settle into homes. The bell has completed its orchestration. The day's rhythm is fully executed. The village unified in action, thought, and attention. Its authority has guided every facet of life, threading together labor, ritual, play, social interaction, and rest into a seamless narrative. The community rests, comforted by the predictability, reassurance, and subtle guidance of bronze above. You watch the moon rise fully, silver and serene, and feel the quiet satisfaction of observing a day entirely orchestrated by a single, resonant instrument. The bell's influence is invisible, yet omnipresent, subtle, yet commanding, mundane, yet magical. It has framed generations of human experience, shaping rhythm, habit, culture, and memory. You understand that life in the village is inseparable from the sound of bronze, a continuous thread of continuity, authority, and reassurance. Finally, you make your way home, stepping quietly through lanes softened by moonlight. The bell's last echo fades into the night, leaving a lingering presence in the air, a subtle warmth that reassures and anchors. Life under its cadence has created harmony, coordination, and a shared rhythm that binds humans, animals, and environment alike. As you close your door, you feel gratitude for the unseen hand that has guided the day from dawn to dusk, orchestrating everything in measured, deliberate, resonant time. Wind down 300 words now. As the village settles fully into night, the world softens around you. The air grows cool, the scents of earth and hearth mingling gently. You notice the quiet teach sound magnified in contrast. A distant dog, the soft rustle of leaves, the occasional drip of water from a rooftop. The bell, now silent, has left its imprint on every movement, every pause, every breath. Its authority lingers, a comforting echo in the mind, guiding thoughts toward reflection and calm. You settle into your own space, allowing your body to release tension. Limbs relax, shoulders drop, and you breathe deeply, savoring the steady rhythm of life around you. The day's work, play, and ritual have folded neatly into memory, each moment marked by bronze resonance, each action aligned with the invisible pulse of the village. Even the faintest gestures, pouring water, closing a door, whispering a word, are imbued with continuity, reassurance, and subtle harmony. Let your mind drift, carrying you along the flow of the day you've witnessed. Visualize the villagers resting, the animals settled, the lamplight soft on cobbled streets. The bell's voice is now a gentle hum in your memory, guiding attention inward, toward relaxation and stillness. Every detail, the glint of lanterns, the shimmer of river water, the scent of wood smoke softens into a comforting mosaic. Allow your thoughts to fade slowly, like twilight giving way to night. Feel the gentle authority of the bell as a protective presence, a guardian of rhythm and rest. Let your heartbeat synchronize softly with the lingering memory of bronze and rope, of sound shaping life, of days measured and harmonized. Relax into the quiet, surrender to the slow cadence of night, and feel a serene connection to the village, to time, and to the shared rhythm that unites generations.